Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. We're just a couple curious people interested in friendship, ideas, and personal development. This is a show that strives to speak to the curious, to those who long to explore new ways of thinking, reflecting, and being. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and interests, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Love it. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Amy.
Gosh, what do you think of today?
Today, well, I don't know if you noticed my voice intonation when I was just reading the announcement, but I don't know how to edit the show in case nobody's noticed. And so we record that live each time. But I didn't realize until I was reading it, it says through sharing our experiences, friendship, and interests.
Yeah.
And today is all about friendship, which is also consequently an interest of ours too, and an experience. It kind of covers it. Maybe it should come out. Maybe we should tighten that.
No, I like it. I love it that it ties in with what we actually say is the description of every show, right? And the fact that we're talking about friendship today at the same time that you and I are basically adding to, building on to our own friendship.
Oh yeah, I was actually thinking about that during the show prep before we talked too.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about, what is friendship to me? How would I define it? Who are the friend, who do I consider friends in my life? Things like that. And I was just struck by that thought that, over the course of this, we've just gotten closer as friends just through spending time together and pre and post show chats, but then also learning a lot and learning from you during the chats, the talks themselves on air,
Yeah.
maybe topics that are
Agreed.
deeper than we would have covered otherwise.
Yeah, if we were just meeting every Friday for, like,
Yeah.
let's have a chat or
Be like,
something.
how are
We
your kids? How's the husband? How's work?
exactly.
Letting people vent, talking about stuff we're excited about. What are they? Oh, what's that saying? It's around small minds, and that's not my point. But like
To
most
talk
people,
about ideas instead of
yeah.
other people.
Or and like the medium ground is talking about events.
Right.
And so I think these longer form chats that you and I get to have has been great at, just expanding our friendship. But then we're also working towards something together too,
Right.
right? Like it gives a deeper purpose than just supporting each other and
Hmm.
others' life. So yeah, I think everybody for listening to this, for allowing Amy and I at least 20 on-air hours. We've probably spent,
Woo!
I mean, we always do an hour and some change. So I think we're maybe at recording 24 hours. And then all of our, we had like 3 months of pre-show prep. Like
Yeah,
we have like this quantifiable, tangible record of our friendship that'll
we
be fun
do.
to listen back in on. And that I'm excited that we've invited other people into it too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but uh, you know, to me, it's not just, friendship can be vague to people. It can mean a lot of things, but for me with us, I feel like it's been about connection since the start. Wouldn't you
Mhm.
say?
Yes.
I
And connecting on a lot, and you just already kind of went through it, connecting on all kinds of different levels, right? Because even though we started as colleagues, we quickly moved into a form of friendship. And then through the show, it's just deepened it. And the foundation is structurally sound, I think.
I
and
hope
just
so. Yeah, I'd
yeah,
agree.
the way that we've been, yeah. So the connections, and then I feel like too, even with this show, is expanding our connections with other people, right?
Yeah, we've both had friends of ours reach out to give us feedback about it, to thank us
Mm-hmm.
about it, both humbling as well as flattering comments.
Yeah.
But then it's also broadened the topics of things I talk about with them, or they'll share their experience of the show, and that'll make me think of what we talked about in a way we hadn't approached it yet. And then we can try and bring that
Right.
lens to future shows or even just future chats we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to say, for as much of a struggle as 2020 was on a lot of layers for a lot of levels, at least when it comes to the quarantine, we owe the show and our friendship to it, right? Or a deepening friendship.
Exactly. That's a really good, yeah. I think that you have to be able to look at what gifts came out of 2020, and this connection, what we've done, what we're doing is definitely a gift that came out of 2020.
Yeah, I don't even remember because after I left the office that we both worked in, I mean, we still work for the same employer, so we'll run into each other. But once I left, our connection really became more about maybe I'd email you a few things I saw or we'd IM every now and then.
Mhm.
But it became more about like if we ran into each other. But then at some point last year or last fall, we decided to start doing Zoom calls and and so yeah, I'm thankful that I was able to make that connection because at the time I was feeling really lonely.
Yeah.
How about you?
It's um I think what 2020 did for me was it made me realize, yes, how lonely I felt and the fact that I actually had been feeling lonely much longer than 2020. It had it even with connections that I had, I still had this just like low level of loneliness. And oh gosh, I'm not going to
A
cry.
low level of loneliness.
Yeah, sort of like how they talk about stress, like that low level stress that you
Mm,
continuously have. It's like it's this level of loneliness that's always in there. And so it's not that it's uppermost in my mind, but, and I think because I've always been fine to be alone, I might, I
right, because
might not.
you can be in a relationship and feel alone, a
Yes,
relationship of any kind. You can be in a room full of people and feel lonely. You can
right.
be alone and feel deeply connected. So
Right.
those are
And so
separate. Yeah.
I'm comfortable being alone and I enjoy alone time. And so I feel like, though, because I'm comfortable being alone, that I might not have recognized this other feeling inside of me and that it was actually loneliness kind of tied with grief, actually, now
Mm.
that I'm thinking about it. And, I don't know if it's because when my mom died. And I think that at that time as well, um, I was really close with my sister. And then it was almost like we sort of drifted apart a little bit. And then mom died, and then things like that happened. Now, since then, our relationship is just amazing again. But, and I know that we'll talk about this later in the show, and I don't want to go on a monologue here, but I had lost a friend, not lost, not they didn't die, but I had lost a friend actually a few years ago. And I think it had just was coming to a head of how much I was still grieving that friendship. So 2020, because there weren't those fun little interactions, that we've talked about
Yeah.
before when you're in the office, you realized how alone you were.
Isn't
So
isn't it amazing how those fun little interactions or even the annoying ones, how crucial they become to being, these little connection points between, like you said, levels of loneliness?
mhm.
That, as much as people might hate small talk or might say they crave deep connections, it's those little things that really help carry you to be able to be in a better place for the deep connection.
100%. Yes, it is those little things that carry you. And I feel like they carry you, they can uplift you, and sometimes they're not small talk. Sometimes it's like, I don't know. I just remember like walking by Chip's desk and saying, "Oh, can I pull a card?" And then we'd pull a
Mhm.
card and we'd talk about the card that we got. And, to me, that's not small talk. And so, yeah, 2020, I think, just once again shone a light on this thing, that obviously worldwide was a phenomenon, was happening with everyone.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. For me, it illuminated the gaps in my life that I was able to distract myself from because of everything else that you can fill your day to day
Oh,
with.
yeah.
So whether it was attending lectures here or there, or having connections with different people, many, more than acquaintance but not quite deep friends, those people, you can
Hmm.
fill a month, one a week, with interactions like that, right? And you
Yeah.
have busy days at work where you see a lot of people, and as an introvert, like, I loved spending Saturdays and Sundays alone, right? Like, after, like, I would pepper my week with events so that Saturday and Sunday I could recoup and recharge. So
Yeah.
suddenly, I had already known, just from like some staycations and other experiences with spring break and school and things like that, that 4 days is my maximum for not talking to another person, like
Oh,
verbally
jeez.
talking to somebody else. Well, and as funny as it sounds, though, like 2 days is great. I love it. 3 days, I'm kind of, like, I'm kind of starting to notice it. But then at the end of 4 days, and definitely on day five, I'm noticing depression is hitting. My anxiety is through the roof. I'm not as productive as I usually am. And so when it came to the pandemic and the social isolation, most of my communication was via text, via email, even for work, even with video
Right.
conferencing. My job changed because the people I work with were busy responding to the pandemic. We're public servants, right? So their role changed. And so I was able to stay busy with trainings and other things we had put on the back burner because we didn't have time before. But then that also meant when the workday was done, or even throughout the workday, I'm just sitting in silence, just talking to my cat,
Right.
food's being delivered. I'm not running errands. I'm not having those
Yeah.
micro connections.
Tracy, I'm going to apologize for actually laughing about the
It was
four
funny.
days. No, because it made me realize that I am in a different situation, right?
You
So
would
even
love
though
the
I
four
don't
days.
see, yeah, I might, but maybe I wouldn't. But because I have a partner, it's every day I get to talk to someone. Um and so in real life, right? Not just on Zoom, but in real life, I get to talk to someone and you get to, sit around and chat about things or watch TV or whatever.
When you have those
Um,
shared connections, right? So
right.
in a relationship, I think it's the Gottmans, forgive me if it's maybe somebody else, but there's this concept called the third thing. So in any relationship you're in, it shouldn't
Oh,
just be about the relationship. You kind of need that shared focal point. It's why
yeah.
a lot of marriages end when the kids don't need them as much anymore. So as children start
Yeah.
to age and become more independent, and they know the kids had become the one thing, or the third thing, I should say. And so it's about having a hobby together. Some people it's church, some people it's, public service,
Mhm.
volunteering. It's just a shared interest in any number of hobbies or things like that. And so when you're alone all the time, I do something, or even if I get good news, you lose that shared consistent connection, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, in addition to illuminating the gaps for me, it also illuminated what relationships I was already leaning too hard on. I joke all
Oh.
the time that my closest friend, I'm, I come before, I treat her like my husband. We're no longer just memes and support, but we text every day, and when I
Yeah.
don't, she checks in on me. But is that fair to her? For
But
like,
that might be something that she actually looks forward to.
yeah, I hope so. I mean, she hasn't
What,
done
right.
anything.
I mean, that you could be a lifeline for her.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
so then that goes into the loneliness piece. So at the onset of the pandemic, oddly enough, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is the what is it, the Surgeon General of the United States during the Obama administration, published a book on how loneliness is, one of the next epidemics of the world, and that he was really concerned that
Wow.
once we saw that the quarantine was going to be more than just the 2 weeks everybody initially thought it was,
Hmm.
on the after effects, because it affects addiction, it affects physical health. He said he found that people who struggle with loneliness, that it's associated with an increased risk of heart disease, dementia, depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and even premature death.
Well, swell.
Right? Right? Like, super exciting as we start an entire year and change alone, sir. But So his book, if you're interested, I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It's quite the wait list at my local library, but it's called Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. But what I connected with the most, and this is even pre-pandemic, but it's that shame and loneliness go hand in hand, and that when you feel lonely, you feel unlovable, you feel unworthy, and instead of your response being to go and seek out connection to reaffirm, that you actually hide away because it's your body is responding to like a threat or a wound. And so you tend to isolate more instead of
Yeah.
reaching out more. And I thought I was alone in that. And he actually said in the interview, it was an NPR podcast that I heard it on. I'll post it in the show notes. But I thought that was just me. I don't have a huge history of long lasting connections and
Mhm.
friendships. What's that or that saying, a reason, a season, or a lifetime? I have very few lifetime connections. And even with those lifetime connections, I'm not their person. Like they have other best friends. They have,
Oh,
so and then because of that and my own insecurities, and like he said, with loneliness, you tend to feel unlovable and unworthy. You don't recognize that connection that you might have. So even like you just saying, like maybe my bestie's totally okay with what I'm doing and get something from me. Thank you for
it's
that. I needed
almost,
to hear
yeah,
that.
it's almost like it puts a block up and then you can't even see what's around you. And it also reminds me of those things where, say you're feeling down and or you're feeling anxious and it's like people say, well, get up and take a walk. And it's like that's the last thing you want to do. And
Exactly.
so even though the thing that would make you feel better is the thing you should do, it's the thing you don't want to do.
And I don't know, I would counter that. And those are the things that help ward off depression and anxiety. They're not going to be your cure. So maintaining consistent physical exercise, maintaining connection, maintaining a good diet, those are all going to help you not
Right. My
become
point, but
deeply,
my
but no,
point
but people
was,
say
yeah,
it like just go for a walk.
yeah.
But you're exactly right. That's the last thing you
But then
can do.
also, if somebody said to one of us when we were feeling lonely, why don't you just call someone? It's like
Oh my
it's
God,
almost like a visceral reaction. Like, what?
you
Like, I
nailed it.
can't call someone.
And when you're feeling lonely, unlovable, and unworthy, you are not an interesting person to talk to, right?
Oh.
You kind of I I tend to go blank. You're not used to conversing with people when you're, kind of hiding out from people. And so even just like the prospect of bringing up small talk or trying to make a deeper connection increases that anxiety and makes you want to hide away more.
Yeah.
But we need connections, as the Surgeon General says, to ward off all sorts of things.
Hmm.
um so, well, let's back it up a minute here. What is a friend? How would you define a friend, or what does a friend mean, when you hear the word friend or when you think of a friend?
So I'm just going to go with the first thing that popped up in my head when I think of a really like a friend, right? A friend. They know where all the bodies are buried.
Well, they help bury him.
They helped bury him. You called them up at 2 a.m. They brought the truck. Like they know where all the bodies are buried. They know everything about you. They know the bad. They know the good. They're with you all the way 100%. There is an absolute give and take. There is an appreciation of each other.
Appreciation.
Yeah,
I like
there
that.
is an interest. Like I think of a friend, um, someone who's interesting and interested, right?
Right.
But
Well, that's
absolutely
what
the first thing
who is it?
is
Alan Watts says, in order to be interesting, be interested. So be interested in others. If you don't know what to say, ask
nice.
questions. But
Yeah.
then also be interested and be curious in things, because then that's what you talk about and people will see what lights you up.
Yeah. So
Back,
what would you say though is a
well,
friend?
first I want to say, as you were talking, to me, it sounds like for you, it's a lot about trust and lack of judgment both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
in order for someone to know where you're bodies are buried, you have to have a really deep bond and
Yeah.
trust in them, that they're a safe space for you, right? So for
Hmm.
me, a friend to me, um first of all, I tend to go after people I admire, people that I hold in high esteem, and that I care. I mean, I care about everybody, but that I care for. Um, but that for me, those deeper connections are more about intimacy, and again, like that trust. So, how much do I share?
Hmm.
You know, is it just a friendship about, sharing memes and having an interest in pop culture together? Is it just like
Well,
a tarot
right.
card friend,
So
or is it
there's
someone?
different friends. I mean,
Exactly. There are
so
levels of friendship.
there
Like,
are levels of friendship. And I guess when I'm thinking like I want someone who understands and is have shared interests, right? And we
mm,
can go deep on those shared interests. But like you said, maybe you share pop culture, maybe you share memes, maybe you do
yeah,
this. I, yeah,
because
there.
so even before I entered adulthood, I've never really liked the term best friend because I don't rank my friendships.
Mhm.
Right? They're just people I might be a little bit more connected and closer to because you can't, I can't do that with everybody. There's not enough time in a day, right? Like you'd have compassion fatigue. And typically I'm not somebody, I'm very introverted. So once I share something once, I probably, nobody else will know that that is going on in my life. Right. So, but I don't want to rank my friends. Like I think of the MySpace top 8, where back in the day, they literally had people rank their friends with photos.
Oh my God,
What
that's
is right?
horrible.
Right? Like imagine doing that today on Instagram or Facebook or something. Like it's so mean. And like to me, like, I apply labels to thing on the podcast to make it easier for people to understand. But my closest friend, we actually call her my chief life operating officer. She's my clue. We have a whole plan that once I become very, very wealthy,
Oh
we're going
yeah.
to start a company together. And essentially, that company is us doing our own thing together in an office that's more like a living room. We're going to have a room full of pie, a room full of Waterloo and sparkling beverages. We're going
A
to have
room full of
we're going to
pie.
have assistants. Technically, she's my chief assistant, but she's going to have all the help that she wants, right? But we just like that's our dream. When people are like, like what's your dream job, what do you want to do for labor, or like I just think of the Oscar Wilde quote, like, and Darlene, I don't dream of labor, like I dream of just hanging around with my clue and having her do the things I don't like to do for me because she's super organized and planningful and mindful, and then I'll do stuff for her that she doesn't want to do. When my boss first heard that I have a clue because I'm essentially his, he's like, "There's someone more organized than you." I was like, "Oh yeah, we get along great."
No, so here's me, Tracy, in my head right now. Wait, she's so organized. I'm like, wait, Tracy,
Oh, I'm
you're
a mess.
organized.
But then, but then I also have, and I hate, like I said, like there are levels of friendships and types of friends, but then I have my friend that I do my outdoorsy stuff with, but we have really deep discussions when we do it, and we're
Mhm.
thought partners and we share ideas. And
Mhm.
then, you have just become like this great person I can be vulnerable with and share all these different things I'm going through. But also we'll talk a lot about the spiritual stuff and the personal development stuff, and we have a lot of similar interests, and we both accrue hobbies at an ungodly rate.
I know.
So we can both support each other in either working on them or that it's okay that we're not working on them. And then but then I also have like these my middle school best friend who we both follow each other on social media platforms, but we don't engage. I don't even think I have her husband's name written down, but it still astounds me she's married with 2 kids. Like I still think of eighth grade her, but
Right.
like we both went through stuff about 6 or 7 years ago, and we had like this period where we just dropped into each other's lives, like nothing had changed. And
Mhm.
then we didn't have like a breakup, kind of like you were talking about, or like an end of a friendship, just kind of like we went back to kind of like our day-to-day lives because she lives out of state. But I also know if something were to happen and I reached out, she'd be super cool about it. Or
Yeah.
like we still have a couple of things and like shared interests that when we see something in the news about it coming back up, she's the first to contact me about it because she knows nobody will get excited about it like I will. So we can fangirl over stuff
Yeah.
together. And I love that. There are a couple of people in my life where I can just start talking to them and it's like no time has elapsed and we neither of us know anything about each other's lives and we don't care. Right? Like
There's something about that, though. That's kind of interesting because there's a little bit of a freedom about that, not knowing anything about each other's lives, right? In a relationship, in a way. Anyways, not sure where I was going to go with that.
it's so easy to get distracted talking about the day to day, but like I feel like for that eighth grade middle school best friend, I know who she is at her core, right? Like we're still our eighth grade selves at heart. Our character, while we've matured and we might be better at living it or expressing it, I know who she is as a person, and I can trust that implicitly, right? And they're when you meet that person as an adult, when you have that level, like that's a soulmate to me. As
Yeah.
kids, it makes sense because you grow up together and you trust each other, and kids usually don't hold a lot of biases and judgments against each other. So that's why you see, even as people grow into very different adults, they still have like these eclectic, amazing, deep friendships.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like when you see that, like I said, like run into that as an adult, like you have to hold on to that. Like you have to treasure that because it's so rare just to match with someone like that.
Yeah. I'm still friends with my best friend was in eighth grade.
I
I
love
met
that.
them when I moved to St. Louis Park and yeah, best friends. And then, kind of drifted apart a little bit, got back together, drifted apart, got back together. Nothing horrendous ever happened. It was just, like marriage and babies and work, oh my, that kind of thing. But she is and actually I have other friends from that who became friends in eighth grade. And uh
Are now friends.
we meet on Zoom. We were meeting in real life. We'd meet at restaurants like once every couple months, and we do meet on Zoom, and it's really fun and it's a really good connection. It sort of centers me many times, but it's not the one on, it's not a
Right.
one-on-one deep connection. Um, yeah.
What's there's a quote from Great Gatsby, and it might just be from the movie and not the book. I forget where there are parallels and overlaps and whatnot, but it's even I remember it because it's on the soundtrack. But it's along the lines of I love large parties. There's so much more intimate than small gatherings. Because at a small gathering, you're stuck in those, dyads or triads or, just like one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
situations. But when you're at like a big gathering in a bigger group, you can have all these little moments of intimate one-on-one
So
connections,
interesting.
but it's still
Yeah.
kind of part of a larger group and you can bring others into it. And I love that my grandmother, she's a part of a group they call themselves the Sister Chicks, and the largest portion of the group are actual sisters, and then it's like friends of those individual sisters and friends of friends, and they've just grown and they're all really close now, and they go on vacations together and they make shirts and they do crafting weekends and they go to the cabin, and like I remember my grandma making jello shots for the girls weekend. In her
Yeah.
96, and
That
she has a
actually,
community, like it's so wonderful.
that makes me really sad as I laugh uproariously. No, I think that I am envious of that when I
Same.
hear other people have that and like go away on like girls' weekends and things like that. I'm like, yeah, that
I
would
will
be
say they're not without drama. I always hear a good story or two. But I
okay.
also know that there was this period of time everybody in my family ended up on vacation in the same weekend without telling each other. So while I was away in Oregon, somehow my mom, her sister, and their stepmom, which is my grandma, all ended up in the same city in Florida together. And they discovered it because I don't remember who was where, but my parents were on a dock and spotted the sister chicks on like a beer boat, so similar to like those little like carts that a pedal pub or whatever. It was like a pontoon for that, having a raucous good time in their pink shirts, and like everybody's sending me pictures of them, getting together in Florida, and I'm just like, I'm not even in Minnesota. Like, who am I going to bump to where I am in Oregon? But like, they never would have noticed her there or like each other had they not been a part of that larger group.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
theme everything and they have so much fun doing it. Yeah, that was my first thought too when I first heard about it. It was like, I don't have a big group of friends.
Mhm.
But when I bought my house, I was encouraged. I was talking about how, I'm too old for a housewarming party to one of our colleagues and friends. And she was just flabbergasted by that. And I was like, no, like, you, I've never been married, so there are definite things that I need, right? Because usually at a wedding is when you get the nice set of pots and pans and the Crate and Barrel gift cards and all this sorts of stuff. And I was like, I'm still slumming it with, the stuff I could afford in my 20s. And I was like, so I do have stuff I need, but it feels like a weird ask in your 30s, right? And so she really encouraged me. And then even every time I gave her my list of friends or family, she kept encouraging me to expand it and expand it. But I tried to be really thoughtful of the group of women that I got together. And I'm so glad I did, because people, when we're in our one on one, will still talk about the Nook. That there was this little,
Honestly, it was like
oh,
magic. It was the
yeah,
magic nook.
and I forget, and she has such a creative name for it. So I apologize. I don't even know if she knows about this podcast, but she has this cozy little nook. It used to be like a sun porch in her house, and she filled it with these big chairs and this big couch. And somehow, like 3/4 of the party ended up in that room just talking about hypothetical questions, but they were all around
We,
spirituality and
oh
self.
yeah,
And
we had really cool,
yeah,
deep conversations.
and the people who didn't get a chance to be in the Nook, what I hear is, oh man, I wish I could have been in the Nook. Like, we need to hang out with those women again.
We were in the room where it
We
happened,
were in the room.
Tracy.
Not to say that we weren't having a good time in the other room, but like, I I pulled together these different people of different facets who you probably looking at them whether as colleagues or just women in my life. And some of, I mean, some people were well into their 60s and retirees, and some people mid 20s and just out of college. And everybody's still connected and had like this magical great time, and I just enjoyed bringing them together, like even if it was just for like just that moment, even if no long lasting connections. But I also know, like, if I wanted to have a bonfire, I could create my own sister chicks. Like, I bet those people would come.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Like, how do you just like say, wait a minute, I'm feeling lonely when what, but with a little bit of bravery, what do you do? Like, I mean, last fall, I guess I'll go first. Last fall, um, now I'm trying to think if it was before we started doing ours, it doesn't matter. But I was like, oh, I am feeling lonely. And I had reconnected with an old friend from Rhode Island, on social media. And then in February of last year, she actually came to Minnesota because her daughter lived close, like right over the border in Wisconsin. And she said, I'm going to be in Minnesota. Do you want to meet for lunch? It was like, absolutely. Well, we met in for lunch, and it was like, of course, here you are. Oh, there you are.
There you
Right. It was
are.
immediate. There you
Mm-hmm.
are. So then we really stayed in contact, but it still wasn't like every day or anything like that. And then finally, I just was like, this is ridiculous. And I texted her and said, hey, what if we did like a FaceTime call and connected that way? And it did take a little bit of bravery, because she could have maybe said, no, I don't have time, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
busy, or maybe she wouldn't have been interested, but she was. But if I hadn't reached out, I would have just been telling myself stories about, not having connections. And so there you go. And now we have done this multiple times, super connected, feeling super connected now with her again.
And that connection breeds more connection, right? That the
Right.
more you reach out to her or she reaches out to you, that just opens the doors or you climb the steps to just more and more opportunities and a more open
Well,
heart
and
or
not only opportunities, but I think you start to feel braver about it, right?
Mhm.
Like, first of all, no one's going to die if someone says no. You're okay. Like, you just have to get to that point. But honestly, even like with my sister, and obviously she's family, like, what are you going to say? No, I don't want to talk to you. I guess she could.
You
Family
can
could
still
certainly
hurt
do that.
family's feelings. Yeah.
But we decided that it would mean more for us to have um the uh, the face chat. Now she has a different phone than I do, so we do Google Duo, but we do that every week. Well, we try to do it every week. And it's so connecting for us to be able to see each other and then like to show each other things. And there's just something about that is more
Yeah.
connecting when you see someone's face.
I have so many thoughts about that. So first of all, I
Yeah.
want to say, thank you for sharing because it's about being brave. Like, to have a friend, you have to be a friend, and sometimes that means being the first to reach out, being the
Yeah.
first to say if it's someone you don't know, hello. If it's someone you do know, it's saying, "Hey, I want to connect more. Are you open to that? Do you have availability for that?" But you had mentioned, that when you were feeling lonely and you weren't sure about what to do, you started telling yourself stories. And so, not that I currently do this, but maybe I'll start. But let's start authoring our own stories. Like, whatever that gremlin in your head is. I named mine Chad one day, right? No,
Yeah.
Brad.
Brad. You and I
Um,
keep getting that mixed up.
Brad.
Brad, Chad.
So you can either tell it to be quiet, but that just tells it to be quiet. I say reauthor it as, oh my God, what if this person wants to be friends with me and they're
Yeah.
too scared to reach out? What
Yeah.
if I could bring so much value to their life? I forget I forget the words that you shared, but I still hold in my heart the feeling it created. But I was telling you about a gentleman that I find very crushable. I'm an adult, so it is. It's an acquaintance, somebody I run into. It astounds me he's single. And you were like, well, why don't you do something about that? And I was like, oh no, I'm not good enough for him. And you were along the lines of like, what if you're exactly what he needs? Like, and I was like,
Yeah.
no. But like, of course you're not going to be good enough for somebody if you don't think you're good enough. It has absolutely nothing to do
Right.
with, you don't know what they need, right? You don't know, you could be exactly what someone is missing or what they want in their life, and that platonic or romantic.
Right.
You have to be able to show up as yourself. Because I think one thing that comes with that loneliness and that shame is when you do go out to talk to people or you are in situations where you have an opportunity to socialize, I tend to mirror or overly affirm
Yeah.
other people or make it about them and not
Oh,
really talk
Tracy.
about myself. And
Yes.
how can you become, how can you create those deeper connections when you do that, right? You might make an acquaintance, but who are you in that relationship then?
I feel like this is uh, expands out, right? Even more than just friendship. Like if you aren't willing to be brave and show up as the person you are in any situation. Now, granted, some situations you have to have a little bit of give and take, right? But I feel like I used to, and I think my husband even used to call me a chameleon before because he saw what I would do in different relationships, that I would just become, maybe I'd be quieter or say I liked certain things or whatever, but I was not showing up as myself. And so then, even if you're mirroring the other person or being a chameleon, are they actually your friend or are they just
Right.
their own friend? I
Mhm.
mean,
And even like going back to like those different, you don't always have like that one best friend that fills every need.
mhm,
As great as that sounds, it's really unrealistic to have. Again, unless it's that childhood person. And so when I talk about like that friend I do the nature stuff with and deep talks and this and that, I am still 100% me in those situations. But it's
yes,
the situation we're in that's the theme of the friendship, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
also feel like,
Because we're multifaceted.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm not hiding who I am. And I'll still
Mhm.
bring up other topics. And if they don't land, they don't land, and vice versa. And I also feel like, even if, for some of my friends, like they're not typically the people I reach out to when I need help. I know I could, right?
Mhm.
Like there's just other people that I have, like you were talking about, that deeper history, that already know where the bodies are buried and how to handle me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to them first.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, so having that one friend, or even if you have a ton of friends, sometimes you don't have those deep connections, but just making sure that you are yourself when making friends. But for me, I what I like to do when I start to get to know people, one of my strengths is really is input. If we're going for the the actual top strengths,
I
but so
will be
I
talking about
gather.
that next week.
Right. So yeah, so I gather really easily and collect, without even thinking about it, information. And that's not just like a human Wikipedia thing, or just like an interest in things and ideas. But when I see somebody and they mention something, or that they want something, or they talk about their interests, there's just this imprint in my head, like you said, like chip tarot cards, chip astrology, chip Sims, chip, like there's just like I have like this check, 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 check,
So
check.
I'm just going to call it what it is. You can connect then.
Yes.
And we're talking about connections, and you have these things, these interests, and then you see someone, you're like, oh, I can connect this
Yes.
idea with this person who would appreciate it.
So not when I'm feeling lonely, because usually when I'm feeling lonely, I've waited too long. But I
Yeah.
try and be intentional in my actions, my behaviors, and my relationships. And so, are you watering them? And so sometimes when I see something and it makes me think of that person, when I'm really lonely, my mind will tell me that story of don't bother them. You reach out to them too much. They don't do this for you. But when I'm in a good place, it is, oh my God, they'll love this so much. And if I don't hear back, I don't care. I just wanted to send them the thing. And it's like a little, hey, thinking of you and making you think of me. Haha. Just like, you have to be brave. And so the same thing goes for just like, if you want to talk to someone, or if you're thinking about someone or something like that, text hello. I feel like I bother my neighbors all the time. And here they feel like they can't, like I'm always being thoughtful for them, so that when I actually do literally ask for help, like, hey, can you help me carry something? They're excited to be able to do something in return
Oh
for me.
gosh, we tell ourselves so many
So many
stories.
stories.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so again, it goes back to that bravery, and it goes back to being intentional. And it's, we talk about it a lot on the different shows. Like, don't be a doormat, but also give without the expectation of receiving. So open your heart,
Ooh.
open
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
and you'll tend to, maybe it won't be fulfilled in the way you were thinking. But like when you're at an event, when you're at a coffee shop, say hi to people that seem interesting, or say, oh my gosh, is that book any good? Or I read that, I love that author, I saw that lecture. Find ways to start a conversation. And typically it's
Yeah.
questions, right? It's asking them questions. But yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
gotta be
questions. And
brave.
I can remember one time I was in line at the airport with my sister, and I just started talking to people. She's like, wow, you talk to people. I'm like, well, don't you? She's like, no. But I think that you, so of course you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to be brave. You have
Yeah,
to be vulnerable. You have to set,
be excited,
yeah, you have to be excited. You have to be
curious.
maybe curious,
I keep interrupting you.
expectational. What did you say?
Keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Oh
Like
no,
every time
that's
you take a breath, I'm like, adjective, pronoun, noun,
yeah.
verb.
That just means you're interested.
I think it's funny that your sister says that, because it's about boundaries, right? You're not going to sit down at the airport and talk to the person about your divorce, right? Like,
Right.
that's not a good boundary to set. Like I'm the one thing I haven't quite figured out yet is there are a few people in my life that are in between acquaintance and friend, right? So it's the colleagues, the neighbors, the classmates, the people I have multiple touch points and connections with, and I can tell we have similar values, we have similar
Yeah.
characters, that we have that admiration, care, respect, and interest in each other. but we haven't found that thing to sustain a conversation beyond, hey, how's your day? Right? That like
Well, and of course, I mean, when you think about it, though, it is a tough time to develop a relationship,
that
to
too.
start a new
Yeah.
friendship, because it's not like you can go, hey, let's meet for coffee, because you're just not going to do that yet.
Yeah.
Um, but, and I feel like that whole thing, like sustaining a conversation, that builds on itself as well. But typically, if you've got that third thing, right? So if you were at a coffee shop, or you went to go see a movie or something like that, you'd have that third thing
Yeah.
that would be around you or you'd be a part of that you could talk about as well. It's hard. It's hard
It's
being a
hard.
grown up and
It's
trying to
hard
make
being a
friends.
kid. I have, little nieces and nephews that talk about this, even pre-quarantine and doing school at home, that they feel like they don't have friends, or sometimes, they're still learning their emotions and their words.
Mhm.
And so they have to navigate,
Tracy, I'm still learning my emotions and my
right?
words.
And that's what I told her.
Oh, good.
But it's these, I feel like those stories we tell ourselves are rooted in how the experiences we have as kids. And so I also encourage
Oh,
you, if you
they
have children in your
are.
life, to talk about this with them.
Yeah.
How to be a friend, how to make friends. But that ultimately, and I didn't really feel this till I turned 30. I had that magical switch women talk about, that after 30, I just didn't care what other people thought of me. But the really poignant way to put it into words, it wasn't so much about judgment, but I swapped from, do they like me? Do they like me? Do they like me? In my head, I want them to like me. I want them to like me, before interactions, before dates, at work, to, do I like them? Like, I have a lot less time in life. I got a lot
So
less energy
great.
for BS. I'm going to be a lot more discerning. Do I want you in my life? Like, what value are you going to bring? And that doesn't mean that you have to do things for me, but like, how are you going to make me feel emotionally? Am I going to be uplifted just being around you without either of us, trying to achieve that?
Ooh, that's a really good point too, because you can have friendships and feel a very deep, like you can feel like this is my friend, and yet spending time with them can just drain you,
So
right?
draining.
Yeah.
Well, and so then that's the flip side of all of this, is sometimes friendships end, and you alluded to your recent experience. I had one happen just before the pandemic. So they talk about reason, season, or lifetime for friends. And this was a person who, for me, hates that saying. And, we would talk about how we're ride or die. And although they're, sometimes you do have to have like an actual breakup with person. So like we were just talking about, like, they're
Mhm.
becoming draining. You're not a good match anymore, different places. Sometimes you do have to instill boundaries and change the relationship.
Mhm.
But sometimes they just kind of fall off, as we saw a lot of at the pandemic, that if you're suddenly not face to face at work, you're not talking to each other. I experience it every time I leave a job. People who I would have called a close friend while I was there and we did stuff during and after work together, haven't heard from them since my last month. And it hurts, but it also just, you lose that third thing, right? But also, sometimes it's through thoughtlessness, right? And so in my instance, I don't really know what happened. It feels like it was a combination of the three, that we're just kind of running our course. But then a bigger issue was, people not really sharing, feelings about certain things, or being open, maybe expecting mind reading. But then also, we lost a lot of our third things together in a short time
Mm,
span. And
yeah.
so I had to grieve that relationship. And it happened just before the pandemic. So then, like you were talking about, there's all these layers of things we're experiencing in the past year. And sometimes it will kind of hit me like, what did I do wrong? And I feel, sometimes I'll feel like reaching out, but then I'll also be like, I'm not missing it. Like, I love that person and I wish them well, and I'd be excited if we bumped into the street, but I'd be forcing it, if I were to reach out and try and recreate what we had before. Like that, like
Ah,
for me, it's that
that's
season
it.
period that we
Yeah.
we we were intended to be in each other's life, and we were so helpful in that period of time.
Mhm.
And maybe we'll have another season later on, but I feel like whether there's a pandemic or not, I'd be forcing it, right? Like, and how authentic
Mhm.
is that? Like, do you want to be that friend that always reaches out and schedules events and then cancels the actual day of, right? Like, you're excited in the moment talking about it, and then the day comes and you're like, oh, I don't have the energy for that. Like, how many
Right.
people do that? And I was like, I don't want to be in that sort of cycle in it. But I also, like, I miss what we had.
See, that's it, because it feels very much aligned with how I was feeling with the relationship that ended. For me, is I didn't know what happened either. Like, I could kind of like, was it this maybe? Was it that maybe? Like, and I did try reaching out a couple times. But now, just through this talk, right this second, I realized, oh, I'm grieving the actual sort of the feeling around the relationship of what it was,
Mhm.
not the actual relationship. I'm grieving the fact that it was a person that I talked to every single day, and we were involved in each other's lives and everything like that. I'm grieving the situation and not necessarily the actual person.
Mhm.
um wow, thank you.
Yeah. But again, like, I'm so thankful for the friendships I currently have, but the ones I've also had, whether they ended badly or goodly or just kind of tapered off.
Goodly.
Like,
Yeah.
you are the people you spend the most time with.
Mhm.
And so, even though that person and I, were just the season of my life, she is a big part of why I am who I am today and why I'm into some of the interests and
Exactly.
hobbies I'm into. and
Yes.
and she helped get me through tough times, and I hope I did the same for her. And so I'm
Yeah.
thankful for that. And so I'm always open for that to happen again. But as we grow as people, and the same thing happens in relationships, or like romantic relationships, sometimes you grow apart because we've healed each other, right? Like, we've healed each other or
Yeah.
helped each other, and now instead of growing parallelly, you start to branch
Right.
off, and maybe you'll come
Right.
back, like maybe it'll
Yeah.
be more like a braid. But
Yeah.
um yeah, so yeah, allow yourself to grieve, but then also have accountability for who you were as a friend. And maybe you can't repair the relationships you had in the past, but you can be more mindful and intentional of the friend you will be in the future, right?
Yeah. I
It,
think that's so important. And I think that that's something easily forgotten, that we concentrate more on the other person. I need a friend. I need a friend. I need a friend. Not, am I a friend? Right? Am I reaching out to people? Am I thinking of other people and doing things for other people?
yeah, and that's
Am
why,
I inviting people to things like
like you said, the worst they can do is say no. So whether
right?
it's somebody that's currently in your life, used to be in your life, or a brand new person, they can say no, and it's
Mhm.
okay for people not to like you. Go find the ones that do. It's okay for people to not have time for you. Go find the one that you're meant to match up with,
Yeah.
right? Don't try and force or overly dwell on where you feel there's a lack.
Really good point. I just want you to know I had a little bit of a visceral reaction when you said you not everyone's going to like you. You have to be okay with not everyone liking you. I'm like, well, but I must. Everyone has to like me. But I think I'm finally getting over that. I did not turn 30 and then not care what anyone else thinks. I missed that one. I was absent that day in class. So I'm I'm like double the age and finally getting to that point, right? But I
I
think
still want to be likable. I want that feeling of
that's
worthiness and
different.
value and connection,
To
but it's
be
different.
likable is different than needing everyone to like you, even like annoying people,
And
right?
what was the kicker for me, like when that switch happened, was I don't like everyone and I don't want to have to. There are people in my office that I don't want to spend my time with, and I
Yeah.
don't hate them. I don't wish bad things on them. I don't want to be around them. And I just thought, it was like, wow, I'm probably that person for people here. I had a friend I was venting and complaining to a little bit too much just a few years before this birthday. And she's like, wow, I wonder what they think about you. And I was like, oh God. I was like, okay, one, thank you, I'll shut up. But also, like, yeah, what do they think about me? And then I was like, you know what? I don't care. I don't, like, we're just not a good match. And that's okay. So that's what that statement means. It doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean to have one of those like you take it or leave it attitudes. Like,
Right.
I have a friend whose friend through a wedding we had to spend a lot of time with. We were not a good match, but she literally has a tattoo on her bum that says kiss my ass. And that is her as a person, and I am the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And so it was like, you have this physical representation on your body of why we are not a good match, and I have to spend many hours with you. So that works for her. It works for her. She's got relationship friendships, all sorts of that. I love that for her. But like, it's not having an attitude of like, I don't need you in my life if you don't need me. That's not what it's about. But it's not basing your worth on whether or not someone likes you. It's again
Yes.
not mimicking or mirroring somebody else. Being
Mhm.
able to be your full self and putting those little bids for attention out there, and being
Mhm.
okay with the ones that quote unquote reject you or don't take you up on it. And those
Yeah.
times that do hurt, just think about all those times that you don't accept bids from other people's attention.
Again, yes. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
when my sister and I commiserate about how we're single and this and that, and I'm just like, and she'll you'll have moments of judgment in your life of other people. We all do. And one of she'll say something like, well, like, how does so and so have a husband and I don't, like some sort of personality, or or just looking at people in the stores, and I'm like, I bet you could have their husband or someone similar right now if you wanted it. Do you want what they want in a partner? And she's like, well, no. No, right? So like, that's the problem. We're looking for our match in other people,
Yeah.
right? Like, if all you want is someone to spend time with, you can find any number of people who are also lonely. Are you
Mhm.
going to feel connected?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess the ask for this episode is just, try and create opportunities to learn about others on a deeper personal level, and then seek out a sustained connection with those where it's a good match for you, that light you up
Yeah.
inside, that that brighten your day.
Well, and I don't know. I think back to just the fact, and I'm pretty sure it was you who reached out and said, hey, do you want to meet over Zoom? um and I was just so thankful that you had, like, why didn't I reach out there? And we don't need to get into that now, but but it did make me think, why didn't I reach out? Because it was more than, of course I was like, absolutely. So, and then I think about uh, a woman I work with, a different woman I work with.
We work with many women.
Yeah. Who's on my team, who we have become very close in a working relationship, very close. But we also are starting to know where the other person's bodies are buried. We're starting to know
Mm,
that. And I had an opportunity from one of my junior high school friends who is an actor. She was in this play, and it was going to be a preview night, and there were only like, it was in a great big room, and there would be like 7 people previewing the
yeah.
show. And I asked this woman if she wanted to go. And her response was like, oh my gosh, yes. And we were very careful and everything. And we went to this preview together and we had a blast.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just ask.
Yeah, and I've had people do that to me, and that's why I do it to other people. And I just remember, I think what the kicker for me was, and again, this was just around a lot of interpersonal relationship stuff came up around my 30th birthday that probably helped. But I started a job as a temp, and I started on 4th of July week. So like 80% of the company was not in the office my first 4 days, right? And so and the people that were there were really busy because so many people were out. And so then, I'm already kind of feeling lonely and it's already kind of awkward. And I'm a temp, so sometimes when you temp, I was going to, for a longer duration, it was somebody had a baby. So I wasn't just, weekly, but also I wasn't establishing roots that we knew of. I ended up working there 3 years. So you never know. But so the couple people I met, they were nice and they were friendly, but nothing really sustained. We didn't have any immediate connection or touch points. And their boss was my sister. It's why I was temping there. So that also
Oh,
created an interesting dynamic. But I'll
yeah.
never forget the Monday after the 4th of July, everybody's in the office again. Everybody knows a new girl starts, but they've now been gone for a couple of days, right? They had a long weekend, they're busy. Maybe an email, people are like, oh, hi, welcome. But if I don't work with them, nobody. So I was in the copy room and this gentleman came up and he goes, hi, you must be Tracy. I'm Michael. And he shook my hand and he just very warmly talked to me for a couple of minutes. And he seemed so invested and interested in me that now that's what I do whenever somebody starts at a new office. And when I started my most recent job, somebody else started 3 days after me, and I went and did it to her. She thought I'd been there for 5 years, right? And I was just like, I was like, I'm new too. Let's do lunch. And every office I'm in, whenever I start, anybody who shows some sort of interest or warmth when greeting me or meeting me, or somebody I think will work with or just seems interesting, or I see something on their desk, I'll be like, hey, do you want to go to lunch? And if it never moves past that time, fine, great. But there's so many people. I think when I left, I connected like 5 or 6 people who usually probably wouldn't have gone to lunch at the time, and we all went to lunch together, and I don't know if they kept up like that together, but I know they still chat in a way that they didn't before. So again, like I'm not as connected as I thought, but I love knowing that when I do go back to visit, I don't have to do one-on-ones, that I
Yeah.
know everybody gets along well and I can connect with all these lovely people that I miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, you gotta reach out, you gotta be the one, you gotta do it.
Yeah, you got to do
So
it.
I asked I asked the universe an inadvertent question. So typically when I shuffle my tarot cards for the show, I ask what do we need to know for the show? What do our listeners need to know for the show? So I do ask a couple questions and maybe get a couple cards, but it's usually around the show or you and I specifically. And because I wasn't quite done with the show notes yet, or like I forgot to type up like something I meant to define, I was just thinking while shuffling, what is friendship? And 2 cards came out, as they do. And they're actually the King and Queen of Cups.
Oh
Um,
my
Not only
goodness.
same suit, but they're the masculine and feminine of each other. And so what this kind of means, and this comes from the Biddy Tarot, so cups are all about water and flowing emotions, right?
Hmm.
And so for these two together, starting with the king, it's about intuition and understanding of human interactions, compassion, creating strong bonds based on patience and understanding, and having a balance of head and heart.
Gosh.
But that wasn't enough. The feminine aspect of that is supporting others by listening with your heart, being compassionate, and caring deeply. And if that isn't a friend,
Wow.
right? Like this would be called a power couple if this was like a relationship reading. But
Yeah.
to me, this is just like the ultimate like how to be a friend duo card is the King and Queen of Cups.
Yeah.
And so after that, I was like, "Oh wait, you didn't ask the right question. What I got to be honest. Sometimes I have a card in mind that I want, and sometimes I'll ask the same question a couple times or I'll ask questions in a couple different ways and be like, "Come on, universe, just give me the lovers," right? This show, I was like because the last few shows, a few of them have been so perfect and unintentionally no card in mind, like getting the sun for the glimmer episode, like that's just glimmer.
Yeah.
And so just beforehand, which you shouldn't do, but in my heart is like, oh my God, the Two of Cups is all about friendship. Wouldn't it be
Okay,
amazing?
that's what was in my head when you were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I was thinking about a card." I'm like, "Two of Cups."
So then I was like, okay, no, universe, you're supposed to give me the Two of Cups. So I'll ask the right question. So I asked, what do we need to know for the show? And I got 2 cards again. But I got the Ace of Cups and the Ten of Cups.
Oh, wow.
So at least numerically, the start of the deck and kind of the end of the deck, the 10 is about completions. You have the page, the knight, the queen and king after that, but
We got the 10 of
usually
Cups
beginning.
last week too.
Ooh, we did, or no, not in
Yes.
glimmers. In
No, not in Glimmers. In
was it
Wake
creativity?
Up.
Wake up,
Wake Up.
yes, for
Yeah.
Beltane. But so these two. is about overall divine love and compassion are flowing through you. A new relationship, be it a friendship, new family connection, or blossoming romance. But what I loved about the Ace of Cups is give yourself permission to open yourself to giving and receiving unconditional love.
Oh,
You have the power to share inner radiance and positive energy, bringing others around you great happiness. The more you give, the more you will see you receive. And then the 10 card is about sharing love with others, expanding your heart, surrounded by loved ones, and a deep connection. So if you're willing to be that beginner of the Ace of Cups, open your heart, be brave. That's how you get to this 10 of Cups.
well, and it's just so
Completion,
amazing
connection.
that all 4 cards were the cup suit. It's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing.
And for everybody who's like, oh, you don't, a lot of people sometimes online are like, if you don't shuffle on camera, it's not real. I had to look up what these cards meant. I wanted a different card. I wanted the 2 of Cups, and I'm still bummed I didn't get it as perfect as these are. This is my human universe moment.
Yeah, and
balloons,
and it's exactly. And what's
you know.
real? Yeah.
Thoughts and prayers. But yeah, so Amy, I want to say thank you for being my friend. Not only my co-host, but my friend. You have gotten me through a lot, but I love your energy and your passion, and I learned so much from you, and I love the lens in which you see and experience the world, and you have such an open heart. And it helps me open mine more, and you're a much better reflection for me than myself. And so anytime, whether I'm self-deprecating or being vulnerable, I feel like you're not, I feel like the validation you give me is very authentic and true and honest, and helps me see myself in a way I wouldn't allow myself to otherwise. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
And then I also just want to take some time to name some of the people I've been talking about. So Rosie, my clue, I couldn't get through my day without you. I absolutely love that when I'm having those hard days and feeling like I'm a bother to everybody and unworthy, and I intentionally don't reach out to people, and not in a way to see who cares, but like I actually just feel like I'm bothering people, that the very moment I have that thought, you have always texted me, hey, how are you? What's up?
Oh
I was thinking about you. You just know. You either understand my routines a little too well, or you are my life partner, my soulmate, but just you've helped me more than you know. I read a statistic recently lately. I don't know how genuine or academic it is, but it's after someone's been in your life for 7 years, you're just not going to get rid of them. And we've reached that mark, and we've joked about it, but we have. Like, I'm sorry. Like you said, you know where the bodies are buried. You've buried bodies for me. I didn't realize they needed gone. Like, you've been there, and I appreciate it. Sue, you are the most amazing thought partner, and I'm so thankful that we stayed in touch after we both left our prior employers, and that although this year has been difficult and we've both been struggling with our own issues with loneliness and where we fall in a world like today, like I love when I hear from you, and I'm always grateful when we have the opportunities to reach out and connect with each other. And although my sister, who told me that the best part of her year was her sister starting a podcast, like my other sister, who when she called and she's like, oh my God, I forgot you're recording today. Good luck with your podcast. Just hung up. Like, I love that I have somebody to go to IKEA with, and just people who see the world similarly to me, and that I know I always have you. And then finally, my friend Darcy, who has been so supportive of this podcast since the onset and is another thought partner I look forward to. Although we connected through a service you provide for me, I continue to go back to you because you were my friend. And I really appreciate the extra time and care that you put in, and that you follow what I'm doing, and that you talk to me about it. So, and to anybody I have not mentioned, you're in my heart, but we're at time. So thank you. And I will make it a point to send you a note soon.
Yeah, as the instruments come up, right? Yeah.
So Amy, what are we talking about next
Yeah,
time?
so I hinted at it a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about strengths and certainly just what we view as our strengths, but also I specifically really want to talk about the idea of how it's so easy for us to ignore what comes naturally good to us. We just take those for granted and we
Mm.
concentrate on where we view ourselves as lacking. And so we're going to talk about strengths, and just because something comes easy doesn't mean it's not good or not valued. And kind of tie it back with like golden shadow and zone of genius and hidden jewels.
And it'll help you be brave in being a friend, to know what your strengths are and what you bring to the table.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Amy. And thank you to everybody for listening. If this episode spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend, make a friend with it. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast, or you can reach out to us via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And we hope you have a bright and beautiful and brave day. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.